Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to England once again, and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys have been getting a lot of plaudits in recent times. They're brewing a type of beer that I very much enjoy, but one that I do feel has been underappreciated for quite some time until quite recently. But they've been getting some really good reviews within this particular category of beer, and I'm glad that we're finally able to feature one of their beers here on the channel. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Devon in the southwest of England, a little place called Crediton to be precise, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Utopian Brewing. So this particular beer is called 10 Degrees. It comes in at 3.9% ABV, and this one is a Czech style lager beer. I know that this one is a pale lager, so I do wonder if it will be somewhat akin to a Czech Svetli, which is the equivalent of like a German Helles, if you like. But yeah, we got this beer here in Sweden as part of the Untappd assortment on the 24th of August 2021, and this was a brewery that I had been meaning to make an order from when I went back over to the motherland of Scotland. And I still might actually, but it was quite cool to see that one of their beers came through Systembolaget here in Sweden. So yeah, definitely curious to see what this one has in store for us. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So let's get cracking then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Utopian Brewing. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the English beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Utopian Brewing. So as I've mentioned to you already, Utopian Brewing are based in Crediton, which is near Exeter in Devon in the southwest of England. It's a bit to the northwest of Exeter, incidentally, but the brewery was founded back in 2017 and they released their first beers in early 2019. But the main man behind this company is Richard Archer, who comes from quite an extensive background in management, and this is spread across various sectors throughout his career. But he felt that the craft beer market was too orientated towards pale ales and stouts, and that not enough focus was being given to lagers, and he said that this was his kind of hold my beer moment, and he thought he had to go for it. But he founded the company along with Steve Cox and Steve Hanlon, although Richard is the only one of the three founders who is involved in the day-to-day operations of the brewery. But the three men started planning the brewery in 2016, and they got together and launched a crowdfunding campaign to raise around £400,000, and they got this from about 200 investors, as well as having help from like family and friends and so on. But they had originally planned to launch the brewery as part of a pub in Merton Abbey Mills in London, but they couldn't secure approval from the local government for the idea, so they decided to focus on a more rural site. So they used the funds to build a brewery in Devon, and this facility that they have now apparently can produce 8,000 hectolitres of beer per year, or 800,000 litres, however you want to say it. But Jeremy Swainson is the head brewer, and he trained at the Domans Institute in Bavaria, and he also holds a degree from the British Institute of Brewing and Distilling, so a very high pedigree brewer running the helm here, I guess, if you like. But he is a great believer in the decoction mash, and this is where part of the grain is boiled before being added back into the mash to create Maillard reactions, and these are the same sort of flavours that you'll get from the likes of browned meat and things. So yeah, they're using not a unique process, but quite an old school one that they say works very well. And as I say, I've heard very good things about these lager beers. But they also use English hops in many of the beers rather than the kind of Czech or German ones. So the main kind of mantra of this brewery, I guess, is that they brew German style beers using English ingredients, which is pretty cool. But over the last few years, they've won a good number of awards for their beers, and as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 20 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Utopian Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And now I can take a breath. But yeah, let's get on and have a little look at the beer itself then. So, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty nice. It is very English, you have to say. You know, it is very kind of old school, sort of English artwork, this one actually. But yeah, a lot of the artwork you'll find on their beers tends to be quite similar to this actually, at least on the core ones. And this one is one of their core range as far as I'm led to believe. But yeah, this one uses British grown lager and Vienna malts along with Godiva hops, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So Godiva is an English variant. It comes in at 6 to 9% alpha acid, I should say, sorry, and apparently it's got quite a spicy green component to it, and it gives you gooseberries and tangerines in the flavour. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that translates actually. I've not had Godiva before, as far as I can remember. The only beer I can think of that I might have had it in would be that English hopped IPA that we had from Pang Pang Brewery up in Stockholm. But yeah, I don't think I've ever had an English hopped lager beer. But yeah, there you can see a Czechia 10 degree session lager, this one. So yeah, 3.9% pale lager as it was listed on Untappd. But yeah, I think this one will be somewhat akin to a Czech Svetli. Now, to explain to you what a lager is, if you're watching this without any knowledge of that, a lager is basically a beer that uses a bottom fermenting yeast. It's cold temperature fermentation. It usually takes place between 8 to 10 degrees. Ales, of course, are top fermenting yeasts, and they ferment at a higher temperature, usually between 15 to 18 degrees, but there's many different types of lagers, of course. So in Germany you have the Helles Blonde, you have the Dunkel kind of mahogany, the Schwarzbier black lager, you've got Doppelbox, single box, there's a few others around there as well, quite a few different lager beers. And of course you've got the Vienna lagers in Austria, you've got the Pilsners which originate in Pilsen in the Czech Republic, and then you've got the Czechs have their equivalents to the German ones. You know, you've got the Svetli, which is the blonde lager, the Leitzach, which is a more amber lager, the Cherny, which is more like a German Dunkel, and then you have the Tmavi, which is more of a kind of Schwarzbier type beer. But the main difference between the Czech and the German variants for me tends to be that the Czech ones are a bit more kind of yeasty and bready, whereas the German ones are a bit lighter and crisper in my experience. But yeah, that's a basic rundown of what a lager is and the different types, but I suspect this one will be somewhat akin to a Czech Svetli lager. So yeah, but as you can see, beautifully presented, 440ml can, this one. I believe I paid 30 Swedish kronor for this beer, which translates to €3, about £2.50-ish, something like that, sterling, and I guess somewhere in the region of $3.50 American for those of you watching over there. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm really curious about this, the Utopian 10 degrees Czech lager, 3.9%. This should be pretty nice. But yeah, let's go for it. I probably could have used my tankard on this one incidentally, but you know, I just kind of thought, stick with the tulip glass. I tend to review most of my beers in my tulip glass, so keep the variable the same and just see how you go. Let me just line this up again so that my OCD is happy. But yeah, certainly looks pretty nice, this one. It looks quite like a Pilsner, to be honest with you. Very clear looking beer. But as you can see, the head on this one is poured with about 1/3 of a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of perfect white head actually. Fading away to be a very thin kind of foamy layer now, of course, though. But yeah, in terms of what you'd expect from a kind of session lager beer, this is pretty much it, to be honest with you. So lovely bright kind of pale golden straw colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, 2, the length of your wort boil. These 2 things are the most important when it comes to a lager beer. Barrel aging and adjuncts, of course, will play a role, but you know, you don't really have to care about those so often with lager beers. That's more sour beers. But yeah, in terms of a kind of session lager, this kind of bright golden sort of straw colour is exactly what you would expect. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, overall, it does look pretty much as you would expect, but crystal clear. And I just realised as well, I forgot to read out the little bit on the back before we opened up the can. But it says on the side here, paying homage to the great session lagers of Bohemia, our 10 degree lager is brewed to an original gravity of 10 degrees Plato, 100% British grown lager and Vienna malts, a traditional decoction mash to develop the malt flavour and body, and generous hopping with the variety Godiva ensure this lager is as bold as it is easy drinking. So yeah, Sounds good to me. Sounds very good to me. But yeah, annoyed at myself that I forgot to read that before we open up the can. Messing up the order of my reviews. But yeah, I think this one looks pretty nice. I don't think we really need to say anything more about the appearance, so let's go in and see what we can get from the aroma. I'm really curious about the Godiva hop actually, and to see whether these English malts are a bit different from the German ones or the Austrian ones as well, we should say. Now that's interesting. Now the beer, you do get a little bit of difference out of this, I would say. It's almost like the bready character is just a little bit softer, if that makes sense, and almost just a little touch grainier. Now, I've always found that English malt tends to be a bit more kind of grainy than the German ones. The German malt has always been very, very smooth in my experience, but you can definitely smell just a wee touch more graininess in there. And remember, when you're talking about the basic chemistry of this, you've got different soil compositions, you've got different water compositions. Vienna malt grown in somewhere in Kent or whatever is not going to the grains used for Vienna malt in Austria and the Müller-Viertal are not going to taste the same as the ones that might be brewed in England, for example, just because of those variables. Same with hops. Cascade from New Zealand is not going to taste the same as Cascade from the US for that same reason. But yeah, you can smell a little bit of difference there. But I'll tell you something, it does smell like a very, very authentic lager beer, this one. And this is what I always rate these beers on, is authenticity. I don't expect these things to do anything kind of out of the ordinary. I expect them to be well crafted and well done. And on the basis of the aroma, I get the impression that that's exactly what we're going to get from this one. So keeping my fingers crossed for it, but high hopes. So yeah, let's break down that aroma for you then. So like I say, the backbone of this beer, you can smell that sort of smooth, wet, white bready character that you get with these lager beers quite often. Underneath that though, you do get a little bit of a kind of more grainy, bread crusty element. And as I say, I think this is one of the traits of the English malt. I've always found English malt is just slightly more grainy than the smoother German malts. So yeah, lovely little bit of a kind of almost wholemeal bready graininess comes out of this beer. The more that you smell of it, the further into the nose that you go. But yeah, big smoothness sitting underneath it, which I certainly like. And yeah, everything seems to go together very, very well, in fact. So yeah, aroma from this one I think is pretty damn interesting. So yeah, pay attention to that, absolutely. But yeah, on top of that kind of bready note that you get, so we've got a little bit of like kind of brown bready bread crust sitting underneath. We've got a bit of a kind of wetter white bread sitting on top of that. You can smell a little bit of the kind of Pilsner malty crispness in there as well, which you do want. But you can also smell a wee bit of the kind of sweetness from the Vienna malt in there. So in the dead centre of the nose, there is a wee bit of a slightly sweet caramelish honey note. But you've also got a wee bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity character coming out of this beer as well. And these are all things that you would expect. But like I say, the thing that kind of sets this one apart for me from the German examples would just be, it's just got a slightly more of a graininess to the malt base, but there's nothing wrong with that. As I say, absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think in terms of what you would expect from a session lager beer, the types of aromas that you're getting out of this are pretty damn authentic, so I like this. The more that you smell of this one as well, you can certainly smell a little bit of sweetness coming out of the bread, and I'm guessing that's the product of these kind of Maillard reactions that you get from the decoction mash. So yeah, I think that's really nice, and the malt base on this one really comes out nicely. Malt base is so important when it comes to making these lager beers, and when they've got a German trained brewer, it makes sense that they would know how to do this properly. But on the hoppy side of things then, you get a nice little bit of earthiness out of the hops on the green component. Yeah, nice little bit of earthiness there. And this is one of the other things I've always found that English hops are a little bit more kind of herbal than the German, Czech, Slovenian noble type hops. You do get a little bit more of a kind of smooth herbal quality out of this one. There's a nice little bit of a brighter floral aromaticity, and you also get some nice kind of grassy character out of the beer as well. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one I think is very, very nice. I can actually get a little bit of spiciness from the grassy notes in this one. So yeah, the grassy character that you get on the front of this beer is a little bit more kind of spicy, and that's what the notes I saw on on Godiva said actually that it should be more a little bit more kind of spicy in its green component, because it's a hop, as I say, I'm not so familiar with. So whenever I get hops that I don't know, I look to see what you should get, and then what I actually get. But I certainly do get a little bit more of a kind of spicy quality out of the green component there. But it seems to come mainly from the grassy note, because it comes out at the front of the nose. But yeah, the kind of the green component of this one is very, very nice. As I say, a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of a kind of smooth herbal character, a little bit of a smooth herbal character in there, and also some how would you say, you know, just a nice little bit of a slightly spicier grassy component to it. I certainly get the gooseberry notes out of this one as well. I'll say that the fruity component to this beer seems to be quite gooseberry-like, but I don't get so much of the orange. I don't get so much of the tangerine note out of it. For me, this beer has a little bit of it's got a lot of gooseberry to it, and quite an oily gooseberry at that, but you know, you get little elements of a kind of appley and peary kind of quality to it, I would say. So yeah, the way that everything kind of pieces together in this one, I think, is very, very interesting. So yeah, I certainly have a big oily gooseberry note out of this, and as I say, a bit of a kind of spicier green component. So I like, you know, the thing that I really like about this beer is that it smells authentic for the style, but it's just got a wee bit of difference to it, and that's the English malt and hops in it. So I can see why this brewery has been recommended to my English beer tubing colleagues. I've been saying this is one that I need to have a look at. So yeah, big shout out to all of them, of course, and do make sure you check out their videos. But yeah, I'm just glad I'm finally able to get a taste of one of these beers. But yeah, I think this is going to be pretty damn interesting. So let me just line that up for you. But yeah, that's all of it in the glass now. So I think it's about time that we have a taste of this one. And take a bit of time to appreciate that aroma, because like I say, properly done, but it's just a wee bit different because of the ingredients, which I do like. But yeah, this one is the 10 degrees, a 3.9% Czech, I suspect Svetli type lager beer from Utopian Brewing in Devon in England. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. Now I'm going to say straight away, this beer is very, very smooth. We'll say that about it right away. Yeah, you need to take a bit of a bigger gulp of this one to kind of get the sort of flavours you'd expect, because when you first take it in, it comes across as like really, really wet in a sense. But the crispness that you would expect of these beers comes out a little bit later. And I would say that, you know, if I'm thinking about this compared to some of the Czech ones, it's certainly a lot cleaner than other Czech lagers that I've had. I always associate Czech lagers with being a bit kind of thicker than this and a little bit sort of smoother and things, you know, more of a kind of yeasty sort of thing. But you know, as a general lager beer, I do like it, and you can tell straight away that it's well crafted. So I mean, thumbs up to the guys at Utopian for this. I need to try a few of their others now, I think. But that's pretty damn solid, actually. That is very solid. So, yeah, where do we start with this one then? But I'll say thumbs up to Utopian, and I think I will need to make an order from these guys at some stage. But yeah, let's look at this then. So straight away across that middle third of your palate, and the back third of your palate as well, you can get that nice kind of smooth bread crusty note. That is the backbone of the beer, that slightly wholemealy, brown bready, bread crusty sort of thing. That forms the backbone of the beer in the middle third and the back third of your palate. Now, sitting on top of that, you do get a little bit of that more kind of wet, white bready character that you often find with these kind of these kind of more, I want to say, pilsnery type lager beers. This one really leans very close to a pilsner rather than anything else. In terms of being a Svetli, I don't think so. I don't think it's got quite enough bready and yeasty character. for that, to be honest with you. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But yeah, the way that this goes together though, it is really nice. And as I say, it's the vibe that this beer has is really authentic, but it's just a bit different because of the ingredients. I'll repeat that a few times in this video, no doubt, but I think that sums up this beer, quite nicely. But as I say, backbone of this one is, smooth, kind of sort of brown bready bread crust. They're a little bit of a homey character. On top of it, you've got that wet kind of white bready note. And then we'll focus on the middle third of the palate for the moment. We'll go into the back third again a little bit later. But on top of that, you can feel a little bit more of a straight up bready character to this one. If you go and focus on the front half of that middle third of your tongue, there's one or two little woody notes underneath. But on top of all of that, you've got a little bit more of a kind of oily, brown sugary element to the beer. So if you go to the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of sweet, you do get a little bit of a sweet kind of caramelly note right in the middle of your palate. As you move further out from that, it very quickly becomes more like a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity note. There's one or two little honey elements in there as well, I would say, but those are quite minimal. But yeah, as you go out from the centre of your palate there, you can feel it gets gradually more like a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. You can feel that flavour coming out progressively more the further out at the centre of your palate that you go. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer as well really suits all of these kind of things that are going on as well, but we'll come to that later. But yeah, middle third of your palate is quite nice. You can feel the beer gets a little bit more kind of sort of grainy and biscuity the further out towards the extremities of that middle third of your palate that you go. But if you go back to the dead centre of the middle third of your palate, then move towards the back of the middle third of your palate, you start to feel some of the kind of crispness from the Pilsner malt coming out in this one. So probably the brown bready notes and the slight graininess that you're getting from the brown bread will be from the Vienna malts. Some of the brown sugars will be as well. They'll be from both the Pilsner malt and from the Vienna malt, but certainly as you go from the dead centre towards the back of that middle third of your palate, there's more of a kind of crisp Pilsner malty element to the beer, so I like that. But on the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit more of a bready build up in there, a wee bit of bread crust. Then the base of that back third of your palate, again, you're getting more yeasty notes out of this. But yeah, back base again, the slightly more grainy bread crust, the kind of wet white bready note, and then on top of that, you've got a more kind of, you get the more kind of yeasty element. So you can feel that on the back third of your palate, the flavour is a bit taller, where you get the more kind of airy white bready notes coming out of the beer. But yeah, the flavour of this beer, I think, is very, very nice from that perspective. The way that the malty and the yeasty side of this beer goes together, I think, is very authentic. I do like how this beer pieces together. It's a really well crafted one, this, and like I say, it just piques my curiosity about the other ones that they've got available, because I'm guessing this one is maybe not quite, a lot of people might say this one maybe isn't quite the banger that some of the other ones could be, but yeah, I certainly like it. But like I say, flavour at the back of the palate starts off, it's quite tall, it condenses down as you come further forward, and you've got quite a condensed middle third of your palate, which I certainly can appreciate. So yeah, sorry about the edit there, guys. Little error with the memory card, as sometimes happens. But yeah, we were just about to talk about the hoppy side of this flavour then. Quite impressed with the malt base in this one. But yeah, hoppy side of the beer then. Let's look at that. So yeah, hoppy side of the beer is really very, very nice actually. So on the green component then, back corners of your palate, you certainly get a wee bit of earthiness out of this one. As you move further forward, you can feel the earthiness does spread forward a little bit. You get a little bit of a kind of herbal quality there, which for me is the kind of trait, if you like. It's the kind of mark of the English hops. I've always found them to be a little bit more herbal than the German hops. But as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you can get some really nice floral aromaticity out of it as well, which I really like. And you know, I think using English hops in lager beers could be a very interesting thing going forward. But round the front curve of the palate, it's a bit lighter and grassy. And I'd say the grassy character is quite smooth in this one actually. There's a wee bit of zestiness to it, but for me, not too much. You do get just a little touch of spiciness to it as well, and I was picking up on that in the aroma from what I remembered as well. But yeah, green component to this one is very nice and quite smooth actually, so it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard too. So on the hoppy side of things, then, or on the fruity side of things, I don't think we really need to say much more about the green component to this beer. This beer isn't certainly too bitter either, but we'll come to that when we talk about the mouthfeel. But on the front third of your palate then, the fruity component of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up in there, a wee bit of a bread crust. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of smooth, and would you say it's certainly a little bit more kind of smooth and bready, if you like. So again, I can appreciate how this, how it goes together in this one. I think this is again a very well executed beer, but there's a little bit of a kind of brown bready base and the wee bit of wet white bread on top. I think suits this beer quite nicely. But on the fruity part of the beer, then, as I always say, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So for me, this one, I think it the fruity esters are quite interesting for sure, because towards the back of that front third of your palate, you certainly get a wee bit of the kind of typical sultana sort of, you know, that slightly sultana kind of dry fruity kind of quality. But as you move further forward into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you certainly get a wee bit more of that kind of oily gooseberry note that we were picking up in the aroma of this one. But when it comes to Godiva, or Godiva, I'm not sure how we would say it, but you certainly do get a bit of the gooseberry. You get a lot of gooseberry out of this hop for me, and the gooseberry actually has a wee bit of spice to it as well. So I think the gooseberry is mixing in with the kind of grassy esters on the front tip of the tongue as well, and that's what's giving you the wee touch of spicy character in this beer. But yeah, I certainly like how this one goes about its business, so it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. So yeah, big juicy, you know, big oily, juicy, fruity character out of this one, which I do like. And it does get a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste. A wee bit of a sultana type thing, maybe a wee touch of a spicy apple coming out just behind the very front tip of the tongue with this beer as well, but quite an oily gooseberry sort of thing for sure. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour side of this beer. It is a very nicely done lager beer, and it really just piques my curiosity about the other ones that they've got in their range. So something for the future, something for the future. But let's round off this review with the mouthfeel then. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, I think this beer, it's light bodied, there's no doubt in my mind about that. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's got a lovely clean mouthfeel to it actually. You can taste the water quality in this one, a very smooth, slick water actually. So kind of interesting that as well. The water profile on this one I think is quite nice. But when it comes to hoppy bitterness and things, I think this is a fairly standard sort of 20 IBU beer. The malt base, like we said, has a little bit of kind of graininess underneath, a bit of smoothness in the middle, and there is a wee touch of sweetness and crispness in there as well. Then the fruity component is a little bit more kind of oily, a little bit of zestiness and a little bit of kind of dryness to it as well, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, a really very quirky beer, this one, and I have to say I do like how this beer goes about its business. So it's a thumbs up from me, and I'm curious to try a few of the other ones. So yeah, I think we can round off this review there. This one was the 10 Degrees, a 3.9% Czech session lager from Utopian Brewing in Devon in the southwest of England. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Utopian Brewing, and we will no doubt return to this brewery at some point in the near future. But yeah, check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.